In a stunning yet disappointing turn of events, 49ers running back Raheem Mostert has requested a trade. This comes on the back of an off-season where he and his agent had been pushing for a new deal that accurately reflected his stunning breakout. The Niners stood pat, however, and now both Mostert and his agent would like to be paid what they're worth. But the question is, should the Eagles be interested? My name is Liam Jenkins, and today we're going to explore the idea of a Raheem Mostert trade. Before we get into it though, guys, as always, a massive thank you for taking time out of your busy day to watch our content. If you enjoy it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for your daily dose of Philadelphia sports content. But if that's not enough and you still want more, phillysportsnetwork.com is the place to go for daily articles from myself and all of our writers. So the main thing we have to address here is why the Eagles should even bother exploring this, and it's really quite simple. After losing Jordan Howard to free agency, the Eagles didn't really significantly add to the position or do much to replace him. Yes, Miles Sanders is the king of the castle now, and that's fine, but behind him sits a depth chart of Boston Scott, Corey Clement, who struggled with injuries, and unproven, undrafted free agents. From LeGarrette Blount to Jay Ajayi to Jordan Howard himself, the Eagles seem to love adding cheap and cheerful running backs who run angrily between the tackles, changing the pace of the offense and keeping linebackers honest. They didn't add a back who possesses those characteristics this offseason until the signing of Michael Warren out of Cincinnati, who, you guessed it, was an undrafted free agent. But it's unfair to expect him to leap into a role right away. Adding a back behind Miles Sanders to somewhat alleviate the pressure not only on his shoulders, but the shoulders of both Scott and Clement would be absolutely key. The problem is, the Eagles don't seem too interested in paying big bucks, reluctant to spend more than a veteran's minimum on a new player at the position. Earlier this offseason, the Eagles offered contracts to players like Carlos Hyde, who signed with the Seahawks, and Devonta Freeman, who was probably signed for his latest package from Amazon and is still a free agent, with LaShawn McCoy always lurking in the background. Perhaps a trade would make life a little bit easier for both parties. So who is Raheem Mostert? For those unfamiliar and wondering why I'm even suggesting this running back, let's rewind the story and go right back to the beginning, because he's going to be a name familiar to many. After going undrafted in 2015, he enjoyed a stunning preseason for who else but the Philadelphia Eagles, amassing 157 rushing yards and 191 receiving yards, leading the NFL in yards from scrimmage during the preseason. Somehow though, he didn't make the final roster and would end up bouncing around several teams for the next couple of years until finally sticking with the Niners in 2016. It was a slow build-up that included a 2017 campaign that was ripped away by a season-ending injury, but Mostert signed a 3-year deal worth $8.6 million last offseason, reflecting his special teams value. That would turn out to be an absolute bargain 1 year later, when he exploded for 772 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns in 2019, leading the team in rushing over Matt Breida, who was traded during the draft window. Not only that, but his terrifying 220-yard outing that included 4 touchdowns in the NFC Championship pretty much sent the Niners to the Super Bowl last year. Mostert isn't the most versatile back in the world, but he still had 180 receiving yards on 14 catches, with 152 of those yards arriving after the ball was in his hands. For context, Jordan Howard only had 69 yards through the air last year on 10 receptions, and with Boston Scott in the fold, I don't think receiving should be too much of a concern. So what about the trade itself? What would it look like? There's an issue here. The Niners traded Matt Breida and replaced him with a pair of undrafted free agents. Sound familiar? They do have Tevin Coleman, who played a significant role while battling injuries last year, along with Jerick McKinnon and Jeff Wilson still on the roster. I mean, they could get by without Mostert, but it's definitely within their best interest to work on a new deal, something that they clearly don't seem that intent on doing. Carrying a cap hit of just $3 million this year and $3.5 next year, this at least presents a basis of negotiation for Howie Roseman, who likes to make deals as complex as possible in order to give the Mirage of a hefty sum while saving as much money as physically possible. I can't see Mostert wanting to sign a long-term deal in Philly behind Miles Sanders, who had 179 carries of his own last year in comparison to Mostert's 137. There's no doubting he'd have to take a significant back seat to the Penn State Prince, and it's probably not something he'd want to do, knowing that he's got starting potential by now. However, this wouldn't be the first time in which the teams have discussed a trade this offseason. The Eagles picked up Marquise Goodwin during the draft window, and there were talks with San Francisco about the services of Rasul Douglas, with Matt Breida, who was traded elsewhere in the draft window, being brought into the discussion. It would behoove the Eagles to look into the idea of acquiring Mostert if the price is right, and if the interest in Rasul Douglas is still there, considering San Fran haven't really invested in their secondary this offseason, then you never know. But if it's securing the bag that's on the mind of the former undrafted free agent, then Philadelphia just may not be the best landing spot. But what do you think, guys? Let me know down in the comments below whether you would trade for Raheem Mostert, what you'd give up, and if the Eagles should pursue it. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I'll see you next time.